Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Jon Miller Schwartz, who is a co-founder and CEO at Ultra, which is a robotics company that is focused on bringing, I guess we'll define kind of in the conversation what type of robot is. I would say it's humanoid-like in a sense, but Jon will give us kind of what the clear definition that they like maybe on this as we talk to him. But focused on some interesting use cases. I saw their robot recently in Brooklyn at Friends at Highline Commerce there, where Ultra is also based in Brooklyn. Doing some packing of single SKU orders going into poly bags. Really interesting to see and really interested to kind of dive into what they're working on and kind of why they're working on it as well in this conversation. So, Jon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to get you on. I mean, we've talked non-recorded in the past, right? So we know each other a little bit, and I've seen the robots in person now as well. So it's been great to get to know you, and happy to get you on the podcast to talk a little bit about this. So why don't you tell us, I guess from your perspective, what is Ultra? What are you guys all about, and why did you start this company?
So at Ultra, we're building industrial AI robots. And so what I mean by that is our robots are focused on doing repetitive tasks that are happening in industrial environments, warehouses today, but eventually, factories, and other kind of, manufacturing related, logistics related tasks. And the AI robots part of it is really about how our robots are controlled. And this is where we've seen some major changes just in the past couple of years, moving from more traditional robotic systems that are explicitly programmed to do, certain routines. But as a result of that control method, they're very brittle and hard to modify. And so this is really why, you've seen such kind of slow uptake, I'd say, of robotics in US
Okay.
factories and warehouses. And what's happening now is people are using essentially the same technology that powers ChatGPT, neural nets, to control robots. And this allows you to program them with data, which means they can be much more flexible and really adapt to new environments and tasks much more easily than they could previously. And we're even seeing robots capable of doing things that were literally impossible just a few years ago. And so a great example of this is laundry folding has been this, kind of prized task in robotics research for many years, and we've essentially now solved it. And so at Ultra, we're taking that same technology and deploying it today into real third-party logistics warehouses to automate e-commerce order packing. And so our robots take goods that consumers order online and put those goods into packages, be it poly bags, padded mailers, or boxes. And that, gets a label on it and gets shipped back to you after you placed an order. And so this is something that, 100,000 people do as their job in the United States in warehouses from Amazon all the way down to small 3PLs. And it's a very repetitive and simple task in some ways. Like if you go talk to these people, it's not particularly engaging. They're doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
They're standing all day. Their knees start to ache. But it requires a lot of dexterity that has previously been, very hard to achieve or impossible with robots, which we can now do. And so this is why this use case has kind of only recently been unlocked, and why we're, I think, the first company to actually deploy robots to automate it in the way we are.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's interesting too what you said there about, I guess, just robotics in general, kind of the rapid advancements that have happened in recent years, and I remember talking to somebody else a while ago about this folding laundry thing, right? It's kind of like this big mountain to climb in robotics, right? I mean, I think it's very interesting, kind of when you think about how we do these types of things from a human perspective and a dexterity perspective, how to then translate that into a machine essentially to be able to do those same type of movements. So I'm curious, like, how did you land on and why is the focus on, well, I guess number one, like, why is the focus on warehousing, right? And second, how did you land on like the packing task specifically?
Yeah. So my background and my co-founders, we we started a few companies before Ultra. Our last company was called Voodoo Manufacturing. We built a high volume plastic part factory here in New York. And so it was a little more of a manufacturing business, but we actually did our own fulfillment in-house because it was, kind of a necessity to be able to produce the types of products we were making. And so, we ourselves have experience building and running a pack out process, and I think realize that this is, again, like a pretty, laborious like task where if there was some automation method for it, like we would have been interested in it. But at Ultra, we had robots that were doing other things inside of our factory, like machine tending. So we had some familiarity with building, automation systems. But again, this was all last generation. And so when we got back together a couple of years ago and decided we wanted to build a robotics company and started looking at all of the different areas where we thought we could maybe, build a robot and create value, the things that are great about both the logistics space and order packing, it's an area that's large and growing in the United States. E-commerce itself is growing at 7 to 8% per year, and it actually still has so much room to grow compared to overall retail in the US. So it's an area that we would love to kind of be in, not just now, but for the long term. And then if you think about this industry's familiarity with automation, it's actually quite familiar, right? Like most warehouses have looked at, different robotic systems or industrial systems, if not, are already using them. So to some degree, we felt that people speak the language here. It's just about providing them with a solution that they can actually adopt and get a lot of value from and doesn't end up collecting dust in the corner of the room, which I think is the story that, we typically hear.
Yeah.
And then packaging itself, again, it's a task that historically has had no real solution of this scale and flexibility. And so it was basically all greenfield. But the shape of the problem from the AI side was correct. As in, there's a technology use case fit here, which is to say every pack station pretty much looks like every other pack station. And so it's not like it's a totally open world, anything can happen task. It's relatively constrained and structured. But again, in a given warehouse, you might be packing one of, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of items. And maybe you've never seen this item before, and you're packing it into a deformable material like a poly mailer. And so the types of physical manipulations that are required are the types that have not been possible, but have now recently become unlocked. And so the task itself had the makings for what we thought would be a great fit for this new technology in an industry that was basically ripe for adoption of automation and is growing. And so that's why we ultimately decided to do this.
Interesting. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear like that shift in the, I guess, the availability of the technology to do some of these movements and things that you're talking about, right? That weren't there in the past. So it really interesting to hear about it and hear kind of the reason why. So tell us a little bit about like the solution itself, because I mentioned in the beginning there, like I mean, maybe you could say it's a humanoid. I mean, how do you classify your robot, and what does it look like, and how does it kind of work?
I sometimes like to call our robot humanish, not humanoid, which is to say that,
like that.
yeah, a little differentiator.
Yeah.
We take the elements of the human form factor that we believe are helpful, and then the ones that aren't, we don't bother focusing on. So our robot, it's bimanual. It has 2 arms. If you go to our website right now, you'll actually see humanoid hands on in some of the videos, but we don't use them anymore. They weren't quite reliable enough for us. And so today we're using kind of more typical like 2-finger grippers that you've probably seen on other robots out there. But one of the key differences between our robot and all of the humanoids or many other kind of more like newer solutions is our robot is stationary. And so by being stationary, it allows us to we're focused on the tasks that are happening in warehouses today and eventually beyond that are stationary. And if you look at where people work in these environments, a lot of the work happens when you're standing or even sitting at a workstation. And so, by optimizing the robot for that, we can both hit a cost that is much more economical. We can hit a reliability that's higher and makes this much, more easy, basically, to adopt than something that's going to be clumsy. And it's safer too. So our robot, you're not going to knock it over by accident. It's not going to wander into some location in your warehouse that you don't want it to be. And so it has some real nice advantages for our customers.
Yeah, interesting, and I like the humanish there. So it is. I mean, it is very interesting. I've seen it in person, like I said, and we have some video of it too. I guess what we can put in the show notes for people to take a look, or obviously go to your website to see what it looks like too. But I mean, it is compared to, I guess, some of the other humanoid or humanish forms of robots out there. I'll say like it seems a little more simple from like a structural perspective and a parts perspective, and not in a bad way, right? I mean, it's two arms essentially with like what looks like a webcam basically to, I guess, see what's going on there, and focused on that packing situation. So talk to us a little bit about what are you, because you have a couple existing customers now, right? Like one that we saw there, our friends at Highline. Shout out to Richard, right? We love Richard.
Richard's great.
Yes, definitely. So tell us a little bit about, like, what are you solving for them specifically in the packing area, and what kind of packing are you actually doing with your robots today?
One of the problems that we've consistently heard from 3PL warehouses doing e-com fulfillment is just basically planning around their daily volumes that they need to fulfill.
Sure.
And so, you have a certain number of, warehouse associates, members who you expect to come in. But, obviously that fluctuates based on the season or whether people are sick, right? And so, we've heard that it's a constant challenge to fully know that you're going to be able to fulfill the volume that you have on a given day. So I think the main advantage that we try to provide to our customers is just predictability and consistency of throughput. Our robots, they're there every single day. I think I can say that we've basically had like 0 down days since we've installed our robots at Highline and at our other customers. And, it can operate with a known throughput. So, depending on the orders that we're packing for a given customer, that the robot might, be packing 1,000 orders a day for an 8-hour shift. And so you can rely on it day after day for that. Beyond that, we also offer a cost savings basically to the, per order, or if you think about like the total, like high level cost of what these warehouses are spending to pack these orders versus what they could spend with us. What we've seen is like 30 to 40% monthly savings for a single robot.
Interesting, and I think it's interesting too because let's talk about this because I posted the video of it when I came to see you and see the robot in action, and also John was very generous with his time to talk to my students as well about what they're doing there, so appreciate that. And I posted a video of the robot in action and packing orders on LinkedIn, and a lot of the response was that like this robot is very slow, right? Or I think somebody said like, oh, like how would you even get ROI for this? So I'm curious your thoughts there, and maybe what's your counter argument to that a little bit, because I think there's a key thing that you said in there that it has this kind of predictability, like you can rely on it. It's going to steadily do this rate. So talk to us a little bit about that, and kind of the speed at which the robot moves, and I guess maybe too like some of the numbers too, like what kind of throughput is it doing, and what's the daily kind of expectation on the robot itself.
So, I mean, the way to think about ROI obviously is both a factor of cost and performance, right?
Sure.
And so, we price our robots at $2,500 to $3,000 a month. It's a robots as a service fee, so that includes the hardware. And so, for your listeners, they can go and maybe calculate what the savings for them comparable to, a person doing this would be. Mm-hmm. But the other side of it is the performance. And I think this is where it's easy to think about, okay, how do I directly compare this to a person doing the same work? But the truth is that this is a machine, and it actually enables you as a warehouse to think about your operations slightly differently. So when we think about like speed and throughput, yes, today our robots move and operate slower than I'd say like an on-point person doing the same work. However, I would also warn people that I think that's going to change pretty quickly, There's no
Okay.
reason to expect it not to change. We're not running our robots at speeds that they are physically incapable of. It's not like the motors are about to break. It's
Mhm.
actually more about the AI. And the AI here is obviously improving rapidly. Even just yesterday, there was a big release from a company called Physical Intelligence. They released a new version of their model, and they saw 40 to, in some cases, 100% improvement in throughput for some of the example
Mhm.
tasks that they were running their model on. So the point is, I think we're going to see pretty rapid improvement of how fast these robots can perform these tasks. But still, I'd almost try to shift the conversation slightly away from direct, like apples to apples speed comparison of robot to person and start to think about it a little bit more on a per shift basis. If you have a person who's doing a task inside of a warehouse, are they doing that task for 8 hours consistently throughout the day? They're not, right? You're checking your
Yeah.
phone. You're being pulled into other problems that are happening on the warehouse floor. You're taking a lunch break. So one of the nice things about robots is, they are machines. They can just run consistently. They're not going to check their phones. And so what we like to do is compare more on a per shift basis. So our robots, again, when it comes to order packing, it's also a little complex because, packing a single unit order into a poly bag takes a different amount of time from packing a 5 unit order into a box where you're also, doing value added services and writing some handwritten note, right? Which we're not
Mhm.
doing today, by the way. But
Yeah.
the point there is, depending on the order that you're fulfilling, the times can also take, a drastically different amount. So for, relatively simple orders, we can pack well over 200 orders an hour. Or if you were to extrapolate that to an entire shift, that can be anywhere from 1,000 to 1,600 orders in a shift. Again, depending on the number of units per order and the complexity of that process. And so the point is, on a shift by shift basis, when you compare us to, someone else packing the same orders, we
Mhm.
are actually on par today. And we think that'll increase as the AI improves and as we just get some more experience. Um, and so, yeah, so that's where we are in speed.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, I debate, I guess, with myself and in my head sometimes about this because, I do see a lot of people question, and not just, your solution, but other like robotic solutions too. And the speed at which it moves, right? But if we think about kind of the cadence and the flow of an operation, right? We do, I think as humans, we have like an inherent kind of necessity to be done with a task, right? Whether that means the task following that is pending or not, right? I think we have kind of like this hurry up mentality, right? To get whatever we need to get done, even though if we think about like packing, for example, right? I mean, most situations like we're packing these orders and then they're going to like sit in staging or on the dock waiting for the pickup at the end of the day, right? So I think a lot of times we kind of don't think about the orchestration of all the tasks in between and how to make that flow so we're getting things done on time and we don't necessarily need to get them done faster to just sit, right, to be able to do that. So but I think it's interesting there how you talk about kind of the iterations of the AI and the more, and earlier in the conversation you mentioned too, like the more data that's being captured, like the better it's getting. So I mean, would you relate it in a sense to how like if you brought in a new human packer, right, it takes time for them to train and get into like that productivity level of that expectation. I mean, will we see kind of the same, I guess, evolution of speed and understanding and getting to a faster rate as the AI model, I guess, trains itself more and captures more data?
I do think we're on that curve now, and that's, in a way
Okay.
almost what it looks like today. The exciting thing is, obviously, as a robot that is controlled by an AI that can be shared across all of our robots, each individual robot learns from the collective experience of our entire fleet, right?
Yeah.
And so today, while there's definitely some ramp up time for every new customer and packaging process, as we deploy more and more robots, we'll still have, we'll have seen more and more of the, all the possible items and all the possible packaging flows, which is to say, I think there will come a moment in the not so distant future where we're going to be hitting not just above average, performance, but how do we get to like the 80th or 90th percentile packaging performance compared to what humans currently do? If you go walk into a warehouse, there might be 20 people packing, and they're not all going to be equivalent, right, in terms of how
Yeah.
quick they are, or the quality that they're packing with. And so our near term goal is we want to be the best packager on your pack out line, and we can do that by basically deploying more robots, getting more experience, and then taking the best of the data, right? That top slice where we're really dialed in, and then using that and deploying that to all of the different robots that we have in the world.
Mm.
So that's kind of how we think about what the performance is going to look like from here on out.
Interesting. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about kind of the human robot relationship there a little bit. I mean, I had the unique experience, I guess, to be on site and see it in action itself, but also ask like I guess the supervisor, the lead there in the packing area, what he thought about it, and he was a fan. But I'm curious, like, what do you hear from the human perspective that are working alongside these or working with them?
Yeah, it's been really interesting as we've deployed robots to engage with the other people on the warehouse floor. And basically, what we're seeing is a little bit of like the four stages of automation here when it comes to like how people experience it. At first, I'd say most people are skeptical, right?
Mm.
They've never really seen or interacted with a robot like this. Maybe they've seen it online. They feel like it's some far off future, and they really don't
Sure.
believe that this robot's actually going to do the work that we're saying it's going to. Once we go and show them that it can, then there's a stage of like amazement, right? Where they're wowed. And it's just like, this is when people pull their phones out, they're taking videos of the robot, they're texting it to their friends and family, because
Yeah.
like this thing is just cool and it's actually
Yeah.
like, it's working, it's doing the job. Then I think there's a stage of curiosity where people, now that they know it can actually do it, they want to understand more about how it works, what the different options are, how they can leverage it more to make their jobs better, to improve the operations for the company. And so this happens during training, but it continues for weeks. Or people who aren't directly responsible for maintaining the robot will come and ask questions and want to learn as well. And then maybe the last stage, this is the full kind of like self-actualization stage, is empowerment, where we want people on the warehouse floor to feel more empowered because they have this robot, and treat it like basically a superpower for their team. Where, if it's a really busy day, how do you push as much volume to the robot as possible so that you can focus on controlling the rest of the chaos? Or how do you think creatively about solving problems that you didn't have as much time to solve before because you were too busy packing boxes, but now you
Yeah.
can? And so ultimately, our goal is to empower the other workers on the warehouse floor to do what they do best instead of purely, just packing box after box after box all day long.
Mm. Yeah, interesting, and I think that's a great point, and it's a great kind of assessment of just the warehouse robotics space in general. When people think about it, I guess there's always people that are kind of like, well, it's sort of taking jobs away, right, or doing this, right, but to your point, right, you're maybe taking some tasks or jobs, but then you're allowing people to do kind of the more like work that needs human focus, right? In that sense, right? It's like there's creative problem solving or looking at, oh, how do we, shift this storage area around to make it more efficient for pickers and think more strategic on that level, right? So tell us, kind of right now, I mean, where you guys are at in terms of like your development. I mean, what is like the perfect use case for your robot? Like if I'm a 3PL, like some of the 3PLs you work with already, and I'm doing e-commerce and I have packing going on, where would I find like the perfect fit for your robot?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just said it. Today, we're working with e-commerce focused 3PLs based in the United States. Our robots are capable of packing into poly bags, padded mailers, and we're going to launch box packing early next year.
Oh,
We can
okay.
pack, yeah, so we're really excited for box packing. I mean, those three I mentioned, right? Mailers, padded mailers, and boxes, those constitute, the vast majority of orders. And
Mhm.
so our goal is to basically, as seamlessly as possible, slot into your operation without having to kind of, preface that we can only do types A or B of orders, right? We want to just be as fully capable as possible. We can pack orders that are single units. We're now packing orders that are multiple units. We can scan barcodes both for order totes, so we can pick order totes off of a rack or off a conveyor belt or out of an ASRS like an auto store or a PO.
Mm.
Once the order is packed, we can sort packages into, gaylords or on a conveyor belt. So really the goal here is to be something that is both very flexible in terms of fitting into your workflow, but that can also just be dropped in to an existing workstation and really doesn't require any heavy integration. Our robots, they can be installed in 1 to 2 days, and then we'll usually take the rest of the first week to just train up the team and kind of tune the operation. In terms of the installation, we plug into power, we plug into Ethernet, and that's it. There's no, no bolts going into the floor, no construction or anything like that required. So it's a relatively lightweight and easy to adjust solution. And really, we hope to work with companies that are looking to adopt new technology to help scale, right? Help scale their operations. So none of our customers thus far have, let anyone go as a result of having our robot. And that comes down to the fact that I think most of the companies we speak to are more strapped for labor than overweight. And so, really focusing on how do we let these companies serve more customers on their side, improve their service, right? Turn orders around faster, reduce costs for their customers, be more competitive. We see those as the ultimate benefits of what we can provide.
Mm. I see. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's interesting to know too. That you said none of your customers have had to let anybody go because the robot has come in, right? Which I think is really really interesting. And the robot itself, I mean, is very interesting to see. So now, what happens with the robot if there is an exception or something, or if it can't handle certain product, or just gets, I guess, hung up, doesn't know what to do next? What happens in that scenario?
So the way we control our robots, which is somewhat common now in the industry, is with a mix of autonomy but also human teleoperation. And so we have a team of people who are remotely monitoring the fleet of robots. And in scenarios where it maybe gets stuck or there's some sort of technical issue, they can intervene. If it's possible to maybe fix the issue just by rebooting the robot, they're the ones who will trigger that reboot and solve the problem. Or if it's a more process driven issue where they need to take control of the robot to fix a mistake or to finish packing an order, they can actually take direct teleoperation control, do the work, and then hand the robot back over to our AI that will control it autonomously. And so this is actually a very similar model to how the self-driving car industry works today, which is these cars are autonomous most of the time, but in certain edge cases, they'll actually have a human remotely intervene and maybe draw the path that the car should drive ahead of it to avoid some blockage in the road. The really nice advantage we have compared to self-driving cars is our robots aren't moving at 40 miles an hour and don't risk killing someone if they make a mistake. And so the stakes are actually quite low with our robots, which is very nice because it lends itself very well to this model of remote intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I mean, the robot seems, it seems very safe to your point. I remember, when you're showing it to me, and we're looking at it in person, and you just kind of grabbed the item that was in the gripper and just took it out to see how it would react, right? And I think, I think it's very interesting. There's no cage, right, or fencing needed, or anything like that. So, which is a great thing to be able to have kind of that focus, and be able to have, I guess, that openness around the humans as well, to make them more comfortable around the robot.
Yeah, I'll just add that our robots are force sensing, which is to
Mm.
say if they run into an object or a person, they're actually compliant, right? So in a lot of obviously like both industrial robots, but even cobots, they're force sensing, and if they hit something, they'll enter a protective stop. Our robots aren't moving with high speeds, nor are they, exerting large forces on the world. And so if you actually, like you're mentioning when we were in person and I was showing you, I was able to grab the robot and almost like move it around
Yeah.
as if it was a compliant human, right? And so that's a layer of safety as well that, is really nice to have in a warehouse. Plus having it be stationary so that, it's not going to accidentally fall over and run into someone.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's great too, to especially to help with kind of like the comfortability of being around robots too as well. To see that. So you mentioned kind of that the next phase here is doing some box packaging as well. But tell us a little bit about like what does the future of Ultra look like? Is it solely focused on packing, or is it going to expand into other parts of the warehouse too? Like what is the roadmap, or what is your vision for the future of Ultra?
Right now, we're focused on just adding as much capability to a robot as possible, so we can just become the go-to solution for packaging automation. So this includes adding boxes as a package type that we can support. We are trying to increase our throughput, so it just becomes like more compelling on a speed perspective. We're also about to release our second generation robot. And one of the really nice things, as you'll see, is it's still a stationary robot, but it can access a much larger portion of the work cell. So it can basically, access 360 degrees up to 10 feet down to the floor. And what that means is you can load it up with many more orders. Maybe you load it up with orders at the end of an 8-hour shift when your warehouse would normally be closed, and it can continue to work for a number of hours independently, packing orders. So that's something that we're launching very, very soon, and then we'll start deploying that more widely early next year. Beyond packing, we're going to start also running some early pilots for other tasks happening in these same warehouses. So the next one is going to be package sorting. If you're looking for a
Okay.
lightweight, flexible, low volume, but still important sorting solution, where maybe today you have people who are standing at the end of a conveyor line,
Right.
our robot, you'll be able to just wheel it up to that location and give it some rules for how you want it to sort packages into 4 to 8 different drop spots, and it'll just be able to pull packages off the conveyor and sort them into those locations.
Mm.
And then after sorting, we'll probably start doing some secondary packaging operations or order kitting as well, which all of our customers have going on inside these warehouses.
Yeah, interesting, and definitely, really interesting to see it in person and talk to you here and learn more about it and kind of the vision and what's happening there. And I think it's really amazing to see kind of the progress in the technology and how you've been able to leverage that to develop this solution and focus on this one use case in e-commerce fulfillment specifically, which I think is one that sees huge volume and the ability to have a reliable kind of steady predictive rate from a humanish packer, I guess, as you said, right? It is a really interesting thing to see and super exciting too, I think, for the space. So really appreciate you coming on the show here, Jon, and telling us all about Ultra. If people are interested in learning more and getting in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, ultra.tech, and you can learn a little bit there. You can shoot us a message. You can also email me directly if you're interested, john@ultra.tech, Jon. And yeah, would love to chat with anyone who's curious about learning more about our solution. We're also hiring right now for a handful of different engineering roles. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to get you on and happy to learn more about Ultra. So we'll put the website and all the ways to get in touch at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here. So, Jon, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
Likewise. Thanks, Kevin.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.